Hello everybody, this is Racer998, also known as David, and today I'm going to be doing this thing that I do every once in a while. It's a kind of commentary where pretty much I just talk over gameplay, but it's called a versus commentary, so it's where I talk about two things in my life that I really like, and I pretty much compare and contrast and decide which one I like better. So this is an idea I got from one of my friends. He said, I was asking what I should do for a versus commentary, and he suggested that I do longboarding and snowboarding. Now, this is actually really hard because both these things I love doing, but they're kind of done in opposite times of the year, obviously. So there's definitely some pros and cons to both. So I'm just going to talk about both, and at the end, hopefully I'll reach a conclusion to which one I like more. So the first one I'm going to talk about snowboarding first. So snowboarding, obviously, you can only do it in the winter where there's a lot of snow. So that's the downside. You know, you can't do it like 3/4 of the year, depending on where you are. But another downside is that it's really expensive because you have to pay for lift tickets. And if you don't have your own gear and stuff, you have to pay for rentals, and the gear itself costs a lot of money. You gotta have snow pants, you gotta have snow jacket, goggles, hat, sometimes a helmet, bandana, and I don't know. It really adds up to a lot of money. It's more of like a rich man's kind of sport, unless you save up for a long time to buy your snowboard and boots. Oh yeah, snowboard and boots, gloves, also, all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, not to mention the lift ticket every time you go, which for me, with military discount, the place I go, it's like $44 for 5 hours. So you're paying like $10 an hour just to go snowboarding. And then you can always get the season pass, but that usually costs a lot of money. So only if you go all the time is it really worth it. But talking about the pros now, so those are the main cons for me. Another con would be, obviously, it's cold. But if you dress really well and you take breaks every once in a while in the lodge, it's not really that bad. But it's not something you can just be out doing for like 8 hours at a time, usually, depending on the weather. Whereas like longboarding, you can be out all day. You know, it's not usually an issue. Okay, but getting to the pros of snowboarding. So you can go, in my experience, I can go a lot faster snowboarding than I can longboarding. Like, maybe not for extended periods of times, because the runs when you're going snowboarding are usually not that long, and you finish kind of fast. But it's like the longboarding I do anyway. I don't do like downhill competition or anything, but snowboarding, it's like more of downhill the whole time, and there's a lot of like jumps. You can do a lot more jumps and tricks, or at least I can on a snowboard. On longboard, I can't do any kick flips or ollies or jumps or anything like that. I've never really tried a ramp. I feel like I'd probably get messed up. The only thing I can really do on a longboard would be like sliding or something like that. Sorry. But yeah. So that's another thing that I like a lot more about snowboarding is the tricks. So snowboarding, it's really easy to pick it up, in my opinion. It only takes a couple times before you get really good at it, and it only takes a couple of tries before you can start hitting 180s, 360s, eventually backflips, stuff like that. 720s, all kinds of stuff. And they usually have like big ramps, like a big terrain park kind of built into the side of the mountain, so it makes it really easy. Whereas with a longboard, you need to find a terrain park to go to, and usually longboards are kind of too long and too heavy to really do any really good tricks. You'd be better off with a skateboard. But really, one of my favorite things about snowboarding is that you can go really fast, and then you can stop really easily. And so what I mean by this is, when you're on a snowboard and you're flying down the mountain, you might be kind of carving, or you might just be bombing it straight, but you can just easily turn and just brake as hard as you can and just stop, and all of a sudden you're stopped. Only if it's really icy. Sometimes when you try to stop like that sideways, you'll kind of skip over, like you'll kind of skip and then wipe out. But it's a lot easier to stop. Longboarding, you kind of have to foot brake, and that'll usually tear your shoe apart, or you crash, or you know how to slide. And even if you really know how to slide well, when you're going really fast, it can be really dangerous. Usually you just gotta wait it out until you get to the bottom of the mountain. Another pro to snowboarding, I would say that it's a lot more of a group activity, I guess. I don't know. Like, I always longboard in groups. But snowboarding is just like, it's a whole different experience to go with a group, because you gotta drive out there and get your tickets, and then you all go up on the mountain and have a day out on the slopes. Whereas longboarding is more kind of like a casual, just kind of do it all the time kind of thing, at least for me. But that's a real big difference. There's something else I was gonna say about snowboarding, but now I can't really think. Oh yeah, wiping out. That's a really big thing. So snowboarding, wiping out on a snowboard is a million times better than wiping out on a longboard, and it's pretty obvious why, because you're crashing onto snow instead of asphalt. And I've yet to get really. I broke my nose once snowboarding, and that's because I was on a rail, and a rainbow rail, and I kind of fell off the side. I didn't know what I was doing. I was new to snowboarding. I fell off the side, and my nose just hit the ground before the rest of my body. So it hit like the hard packed ice around the bottom of the rail. So my nose just broke right there. That's actually the only bone I've ever broken is my nose, which I've broken it twice. But yeah, so that it's a lot. When you wipe out on a snowboard, you'll kind of like usually like skid, and you might get snow like up your back, and like you'll tumble for a little bit, and you might like sometimes I like scrape up my knees like through my pants. But I've never had like a really, really bad wipeout. I know it is possible to break bones, obviously, if you're going fast enough. And there's people that have hurt themselves really bad when they're like mid backflip and stuff. But if you're just snowboarding regularly, just going down the mountain, and you're going pretty fast and you wipe out, usually you'll be fine. I know broken bones can happen, but it's not nearly as common. And I would talk about wiping out on longboard, but now I'm going to talk about everything longboard related. I think I pretty much said everything about snowboards, so I'm going to talk about longboards real quick. So longboarding is pretty much amazing because you can do it like anywhere. Anywhere there's a road, you can longboard. Obviously, it's better if it's, not have potholes and little pieces of gravel. You ideally you want really smooth asphalt and you want really nice hills. But me and my friends have gone cruising just around like back pass, like these little asphalt like hiking and biking trails like back through woods and stuff. You can just go cruising. Like longboarding's a lot more chill in my opinion because it doesn't cost money to do. Like you need a board and you need gear, but it's like you just drive or you don't even have to drive somewhere. You can just longboard there. You can just longboard all around. Whereas snowboarding, you need to pay every time to do it. You need to go to specific mountains that let you do it. I mean, you can snowboard like in your backyard, but it's not going to be very fun. But yeah, and that's one of the main reasons why I really like longboarding is because you can do it anywhere. It's much more versatile. And I get kind of both sports are amazing, and they give you like this amazing feeling when you're flying down the mountain. I don't know, it's something I can't really describe. You just feel free, I guess. But longboarding gives me this feeling way more than snowboarding. Maybe it's because of the lack of like clothing I have on. Like I don't have goggles and a bandana and a hat and a jacket. It's more like free, I guess. But also it's just fun because typically when we longboard like in our hometown, so it's like places that we know. So we'll just be longboarding around. We'll longboard down to the school, then longboard over to my friend's neighborhood, then longboard back on the bike pass, and just I don't know. It's just a whole different way of getting around, and I really like it a lot more. I think overall, I think I like longboarding a lot more. But one of the main cons to longboarding, like one of the main bad things, is wiping out. I've wiped out probably close to 10 times on a longboard. Probably only like half of those have been really bad, but probably about 5 or 6 times I've had really bad wipeouts where I scrape myself up really bad. I've never actually broken any bones longboarding, so I'm lucky. But again, I don't do like the super intense mountain longboarding that you might see on YouTube where they have on the motorcycle helmets and they're all leaning forward and there's like a car driving behind them videotaping them. I don't do anything like that. I have bombed some pretty big hills. There's one we call the Ass Crusher or the Ass Destroyer. Ass Crusher, yeah. So I bombed some pretty big hills, and I've gotten in some sketchy situations where my board's wobbling, but you got to ride it out. And then I've had some situations where my board is wobbling and I panicked and I crashed. I've crashed once on some loose gravel on a turn we didn't know was there. I flew around this turn, and my board just slipped out from under me. So wiping out on longboards is much worse in my opinion, because you almost always will get road rash all over you. It's pretty much where, if you don't know what road rash is, it's pretty much where your skin and your hair and stuff gets like scraped off and your skin gets kind of melted. It's like, if you look down at your arm when you've got road rash, it'll look like that patch of your arm is all red. It'll be super red and inflamed, and it'll be all melted looking. Like it's literally like your skin gets, it's from the friction with the road. It's just so fast that it just burns it right off. And it's really painful. It takes a long, long time to heal. You got to keep it covered, but at the same time, you don't want to keep it covered all the time or it will never heal. For weeks, it'll be this nasty, like nasty scab. And it's really gross. I don't know. It's really gross. And it really hurts because if you have road rash all over your shoulder, for example, or like on your hip or something, which I always get it on my hip, on my shoulder, on my elbows, on my knees, the joints, like the areas that hit the ground first, I guess. Usually my hip. Like I always get it on my hip. I guess it's because you're longboarding, you always fall on your side. But yeah, you'll be taking it if you take a shower, cold water, hot water, it doesn't matter. It'll be really painful. It's just really not fun. You'll just be in misery for a while. And like I said, if you get it on your hip or on your shoulder, then every time you put on pants or take off or put on a shirt, it'll be pretty painful. So that's the only thing that I hate about longboarding is wiping out. If you're careful and if you learn on easy terrain, your chances of wiping out will be a lot less. And really the number one thing I've figured out is that if you longboard with confidence, like if you have confidence and have a really good stance, your chances of wiping out are a lot less. And that sounds like it wouldn't make a difference, but it actually does. If you have a really good stance and you ride really, I want to say like concrete, like you ride like you got to ride really firm, but at the same time you got to be able to carve and kind of go with it. I don't know, it's really hard to explain. I'm really terrible at explaining in words, but yeah, that's the main thing is ride with confidence and know what you're doing and have a good stance. And you'll usually, if you get speed wobbles, which for anyone that doesn't know, it's when you're going really fast, your board starts to wobble from side to side. That's how most people crash. It wobbles and they freak out, and then their board goes out from under them and they wipe out. If you get speed wobbles, you just got to ride through them, and it'll be terrifying riding through them, but eventually they'll go away. So, and I've had to do that every time I go down this one hill. So overall, for the end of this versus commentary, what do I like more, longboarding or snowboarding? There are aspects from both that I love, and I love both, so I would never want to give one up to do the other one year round. I love how I get to do snowboarding part of the year and longboarding the rest. But overall, I would have to say longboarding is my favorite. Just because you can do it anywhere, it's a lot cheaper, and it's a lot easier to do with like groups of friends. Like your friends can all just meet up at some place where you all know and go longboarding. Whereas snowboarding, it's kind of more involved. You got to plan out a weekend and you got to drive out there and pay all this money. So that's why I like longboarding. It's more casual. You can do it any day, really. You can do it in the rain. We've tried to do it on ice. You can do it pretty much all year round. You just got to be careful. So yeah, guys, that's it. I know I rambled for a lot of it. This is actually my first versus commentary, but I want to do this pretty often with different topics, different things. So overall, I'd have to say longboarding beats snowboarding. So I know a lot of you are going to disagree with that. So if you have your own opinion on the two sports, just leave a comment down below. I'd be interested to see what anyone else thinks. And thank you guys for watching. All right, bye.